This is Ryan Bant again. This week we're going to talk a little bit about an aspect of sports psychology known as modeling and the importance of that in terms of what we do with our training and how we manage it, but more importantly, the message that we're sending to the people that we coach in every aspect of what we do in terms of our training. It's a really, really important concept, and in many ways I feel like it's all encompassing into the things that we do on a regular basis with our athletes, with our peers, with our colleagues, with our competition, and everything. So what is modeling? Well, modeling can be seen in a number of different forms. So when we look at modeling, like, do you want to model good behaviors? So how do you handle a crisis? Do you yell and scream and flip out? Or do you keep your calm, talk in a controlled tone, be very professional in your mannerisms? You know, that's an example of modeling. Another way to model, if you are, valuing certain aspects of things that you want to do in a program. So, for example, if you say that, warm-ups and warming up properly is really important to you as a coach, and you tell your athletes the same thing, but then you don't really take any kind of transition into the different types of drills or stretches or warm-ups or different types of training, and you don't model that through your actions, if you're not correcting the athletes when they're not, handling their particular warm-up right or their drill correctly, if you don't pay attention to what the athletes are doing, well, then you're modeling the opposite. You're modeling that, hey, this isn't something that's very important to me. Instead, it's something I say, but, I'm over here, on the sideline talking to a bunch of coaches as opposed to being near my athletes, looking at what they're doing and how they handle their drills. So there's a lot of different ways that modeling comes into play. Modeling certain things. So, for example, if I would say being well-groomed is something that's really important to me, I'm not modeling that. It's just not true. If I say that professional development is very important to me, then I probably do model that because I'm spending a lot of time trying to improve myself as a coach. That's why I'm taking this positive performance psychology master's through Mizzou that I am. But also I feel like, part of that is it's a two-way street. So if I'm getting something, I should be giving something in return. I shouldn't just be taking. So what do I try to do? In the off seasons, I try to share with you guys as frequently as I can about a variety of different subjects. But most importantly, what it does is it shows to you and others what is really important. If your children are really important to you, but you never show up at parent-teacher conferences, you're sending me a signal as a teacher that they're not that important. And more often than not, what that shows is that if you do show up, guess what? Most of the time at parent-teacher conferences, I don't see the parents of the kids I need to see. I see the parents of the kids that are very, very successful. Now, I don't know if there's research studies out there on that or not in terms of the number of kids with Fs versus the number of kids with Hs, honors level grade or As, 4.0 GPA out of 4.0. But I would imagine there's some sort of correlation there because I've seen it anecdotally as an educator. So those people who value teachers and value coaches and value education, they're around for their kids. They're modeling that is something that is important to them, so something that you guys need to know. By the way, my wife is walking in right now, guys. So say hi, Michelle.
Hi, sorry about the door creaking.
So we're getting ready to move. So she's coming in early to kind of help get that ball rolling with taking some stuff down. As you can see, you've probably noticed there's a bunch of spackling behind me. We're getting the walls repainted and stuff like that as well. But anyway, what you value. So for me, what do I value? Well, I value multiple intelligences as a teacher and as a coach. So what do I try to do as a coach? I try to, do a bunch of different training tasks with my athletes. I don't just have one system. I have multiple systems depending on the type of athlete that they are and the event groups that they do. And I live that. That's a truth. What do I value, though, most importantly as a coach? Well, in all of the things that I coach, I value the 400-meter dash the most because, to me, that gives you the starting point to where you can go this direction or this direction with your athlete, and then we figure out through training what really matters to them. So that's a value. It's something that I value. In the classroom, how do I show that I value multiple intelligences? We do a lot of different projects in class. So my students are expected to create a rap, to write poetry, to create presentations, to dress up as a historical figure and act it out, using more modern problems, create a news show, do propaganda posters for World War I, which is an art-related project, to do a picto-word project. So there's all these things that I say that I value. If I didn't do those things as projects, then I would be valuing and I would be modeling that that's not really important to me. I spend a lot of time lecturing in class, so I value that direct instruction. I'm modeling that every day, whether people like that or not. So that's basically what you're telling people in your program. If you model that you value the athlete, but you never talk to the athlete, that's an issue. You know, if a principal says they value every teacher, but they've never come in and see the teacher teach, well, how do they know what that teacher's doing? How do they know they're actually a good educator? They're showing that that's not really a value to them. It's something else that's more important to them. If a teacher or a principal says they really value discipline, but then the school has kids running around in the hallways and never really going to class and never behaving, then they're showing they don't value that. You know, do I value discipline? Absolutely. Do I have a developed set of rules in my classroom that I have as an expectation? Yes, I absolutely do. And I believe that it helps me manage difficult classrooms because I have that structure. And by the way, kids and athletes in general like structure. They don't like the unknowns that much. Freedom is great, but freedom is also really scary. So these are things that you have to understand as an educator and as a coach you're going to do. All right, so inside training, how do you show and model? Well, modeling can be how you carry yourself, how you address the team. You know, if I never went around and looked at the different groups of athletes in my program and looked at what they were doing with their assistant coach, and the only thing I spent time with were my sprinters, which is who I coach on my track team, then the only thing I'm showing you is that I value sprinters. But I try to make sure that in a track meet and at practice that I'm walking around to the different groups at the track, because, you know, track teams can be fractured very easily because a lot of athletes are kind of stuck in their specialty groups. So throwers are kind of doing their own thing, distance runners are kind of doing their own thing, and sprinters are doing their own thing. And so it leads to people being spread out. So as a coach, if I only spend time around the athletes that I specifically coach directly every day, that's going to be a problem. If I ask an athlete that I want them to change something technically, but I never model the appropriate way of doing it, how are they supposed to learn? In the past, modeling came from me. Before any of the athletes knew how to do a movement or how to do a particular drill or an exercise, I had to know it myself and learn it so that I could teach it appropriately. Then once you establish those correct technical models and leadership models, then you can begin to plug in people into those positions or into those demonstrations so that you don't have to physically do it all the time. Now you hold everybody accountable. That becomes then your job. It's like, hey, here's the model. So when athletes come out to our program, the first day we get right into it. We do some fun stuff. We get after it. We test the first day. Because to me, that's really important. I want to know what they're physically capable of, and I want to be able to evaluate them very, very quickly. And why do I think that's important to modeling? What I'm doing with that testing is I'm figuring out what they're best at. So from day one, I'm trying to signal to the athletes that I am going to do my best to put them into a position where they can be physically successful in my program. But then day two, we spend pretty much the majority of day two's practice talking about how you practice correctly in my program, the things that you have to do, the attitudes that you have to have, and the rules that are expected in my program. And the number one most important thing that I tell my athletes straight out of the gate is that this is not a fitness club. Track and field is a place where you will get in shape, but the end goal is to not be in shape. That's just an outcome of what we really want to accomplish, which is to be a darn good program and to be one of the best programs in the state of Missouri year in and year out. Now, how do I model that? You know, we make sure that these athletes are going to do a lot of different drills and a lot of different events in track and field. We're going to have them physically and hopefully more and more and more mentally prepared over time to handle the rigors of competition. But it's not just, hey, I want to be out here and I want to get in shape and socialize. You will socialize. That's a big part of my team is the socialization. But ultimately, the most important thing that I'm trying to model is the value of competition, representing something bigger than yourself, and being a great program. And so we model that right out of the gate. So also, as a coach, the way you carry yourself is very, very important. If you want athletes to do certain things, then you've got to model that. If you want athletes to be vulnerable and be willing to take risks and share things, then you've got to be willing to do the same with them. Now, that doesn't mean you need to go and try to run a marathon or anything like that, but you should be open and honest with your past experiences that you've had, the training that you've done, the goods and the bads in your program. Because the more that you can relate what has happened to you with them directly, the stronger the connection they're going to make. And the more likely they're going to follow through with the things that you ask them to do. So, if I talk about it's really, really important to eat well, and then the kids see me drinking soda at a track and field practice, that's a problem. I'm not modeling good behavior. Now, do I like to have a soda? Absolutely I do. But do I need to be drinking that around them in the middle of practice and I'm telling them to hydrate and have good nutrition? That would be the absolute wrong thing to do. If I told them that I didn't care how skinny they were, but then all I did was talk about their weight and how they need to lose weight, well, then I'm sending them a signal that weight actually matters to me. So one of the little things, and I mentioned this in the notes behind the wall that you guys can't see with our master's class, but I do a thing called a PR candy bar. And why do I do that? Because I think it's okay to have sweets once in a while. I think it's okay to have a balanced diet that includes sweets and fats and sugars and everything that, is out there that you can have in moderation for the most part is pretty good outside of illicit drugs and alcohol and things like that. Having some candy once in a while is a good thing. So every time a kid gets a personal record, they get a PR candy bar from me. I coach girls. So by signaling, by modeling, hey, you get rewarded with a treat with a little candy bar for every time you hit a personal record, I'm sending a message to them that, hey, sweets are okay once in a while. It's okay to reward yourself once in a while with that. I'm also sending a signal to them that I don't really care about their weight that much. In fact, when I talk to the kids, I say the only thing that matters to me is how comfortable you feel in your clothing. And I oftentimes tell the kids that you're going to gain weight in track and field because you're going to build up your body and your muscles are going to get bigger and stronger. And the majority of the female muscles are in the legs anyway, and your legs are going to get stronger. You're going to look better, but you might be a little heavier on the scale. Who cares? Doesn't matter to me. And you got to model those things. If you think it's important to have a kid be in off-season training, then you need to model that by being there all the time. So that means for me as a track and field coach who also coaches cross country, guess what? I'm pretty much always at Parkway Central all the time. Once I'm done at 2:30, with my educational aspect of my job, I'm still there till 5:30 to 6 o'clock every day, PM, every day. And I start at 7:30 in the morning. So I'm there pretty much 11 hours a day. So how do kids spell love? They spell love Time. So if you expect them to be dedicated and to put in the time, you have to put in the time as well, and you need to model that. If you tell them that every aspect of the practice is important, like Coach Wooden did in his chapter 9, where he was talking about the details are so very important. There's no big thing. There's a lot of little things. And that really hit me strongly because I agree. It's like, hey, I want you to have a better block start. Well, how do you do that? Well, what's your warm-up look like? What's your pre-block start routine look like? What's your body position look like in the blocks? Do I address it in practice with training? Do we do weight training to improve it? Do we do anything to change the technical model for you? Do we do anything to protect you psychologically at the beginning of competition and how to auto-regulate yourself or to get your breathing patterns in the right way? So just saying I want you to get better at a block start doesn't tell them anything. You've got to break it down into its gazillions of itty-bitty little parts to improve whatever they need to improve what they're doing. And sometimes what's really interesting is it's going to take actually a pretty big change for them to maybe fix something small. So then sometimes you got to ask yourself, how important is that? If you say that every kid in your program is important, but all you're focused on is 2 of the top 3 kids on your team, you're not modeling that. And even when you do model those things, you have to remember it's their perception of what you're doing that's their reality, not your perception. You could perceive that, hey, I'm doing this, I'm paying attention to kids, I'm doing all this. So what do? We give PR bars and we recognize them in front of the team every week. We have instead of having a top 10 list, I have a thing called an all-world list, which basically means they just have to hit a performance, and then they're in the history book in our media guide forever. And so by the time I'm done coaching, I want hundreds and hundreds of people in all of those events who have hit that kind of mid-range performance to get themselves into the book so that they can be recognized for the history of Parkway Central and the girls track and field team. I'm modeling that. I try to fist bump or shake the hand or high five every one of my athletes before they leave practice. It's part of them checking out with me. I have an elaborate system for them all to tell me where they're going to be, if they're going to have to miss, come late, or leave early. So you're modeling those things. These little things add up to how serious do you take it. If I tell kids I want them to be tough, but then every time there's bad weather or there's rain or there's snow, we don't do anything, or I just let them go home from practice, well, I'm never giving them an opportunity to become tougher by going through uncomfortable and difficult experiences and then coming out of the back end, and I hate to use the word survive it, but get through it. And then they realize, oh, I can handle that. And for all of you that don't think that matters, it does. At districts this year, it was 49 degrees for a high, and it was raining the entire time, torrential downpour the entire time. All my kids performed. We had PRs in that competition, not many, but we had a few, and we won the district title, which we were not supposed to do. We were supposed to get beat by 25 to 30 points. So you have to prepare them for those things. You have to model those things. So that's actually number 3. What we're going to talk about is the little things versus the big things. The big thing is the outcome, right? I want to be this. I want to hit this standard. I want to do this. The little things are what drive and make that a possibility. So if an athlete wants to be a better distance runner, but they don't bring the right shoes, or they're running in the same shoes that they've worn to go to school, that's a little thing. And how does that limit their ability to end up being better? You're like, well, shoes, what does that matter? Well, John Wooden really believed in footwear, socks, the size of the shoes, and the way you tie your shoes. Why? Because those silly things could interrupt training and interrupt progress. So for us, when a kid comes to me and the very first time they say, hey, I've got shin splints, I feel like my shins are pretty sore, and they're sore in both legs, first question I ask them, how long have you been in those shoes? Are those the shoes you wear around every day, all day, or just for practice? And more often than not, way over 50% of the time, the kids will say, well, I've had these shoes since last year. Guess what? It's time to get new shoes. If you're a distance runner, you should be changing your shoes every season. You should have a pair of shoes for cross country, indoor conditioning, spring, summer, spring track, summer conditioning or summer track, and then you should rotate them through again. It's the most expensive thing you got. But your feet and your shins and your legs, those are your money makers if you're a distance runner. And so if you're not taking care of your footwear, the little things add up. So if I don't think that that's important, then, and I don't talk to the kids about it, and we don't have discussions about it, well, then I'm showing I don't value it. If I tell them that sleep's important, and we just say, sleep's important, but they have no idea how to make their sleep better, then I'm not modeling that. That's a little thing, but that's something they do for a third of their life, for their entire life. And if it's messed up, your athletes are not going to be healthy. They're not going to be prepared. They're not going to survive. So what do? Typically, I'll hand out once a year a thing called sleep hygiene, and it's a bunch of stuff on ways to help you sleep better and to get to sleep quicker. And we'll do a team huddle, or maybe we even go, especially in cross country, where we'll go into the theater and we'll talk about a concept. We'll talk about nutrition. We'll talk about, prehab and rehab physically. We'll talk about sleep hygiene. We'll talk about, thinking correctly, having a positive mindset, reframing, positive self-talk. And these are things that we do. I don't just say do it. We have to model and show them how to do it, because it's going to take practice just like everything else. It's really important. So those little things add up. If we talk about how important warm-up is at a track meet, but then we never force the kids to get warmed up in competition. We get warmed up in, practice because you're monitoring that and you're doing a good job. But then you don't do that in a competition. Then we've got a problem. The kids are up in the stands hanging out with their friends or whatever, or they're, wait until the very beginning of their event and then they go out and pull a muscle, or they have a bad performance because they didn't properly warm up the body. Well, those are the little things, but you have to give them a system in which to do that. So what do? We provide them an entire warm-up with a script. So for your first event, before you run or throw or jump, you do this. For your second event in a track meet, now you do this many exercises. For your third, and then for your fourth, et cetera, et cetera. And I even had a coach in the past would be my warm-up person. This year we had a bunch of new coaches, so I didn't want to put that responsibility on them, but they're going to be doing that. That's going to be a responsibility. If I talk about being together and teams being valued and having a good culture amongst our team, but we never did any fun stuff outside of practice, then I wouldn't be modeling that. So what do? We don't throw 1,000 things at them at once, but we try to do one thing a week that's team building or team oriented, whether it be a morning breakfast with the team, a goofy dress up day with a team theme, doing secret track buddies, big sister, little sisters, team dinners, all sorts of different things that we do throughout the season to value the program and being together and all that kind of stuff. So how do I model? It's important to stay to the end of the track meet. We have all of our kids in the 400-meter dash, 4x4 that are not in the 4x4. They all go to the corner and they cheer on and scream for their teammates, because I feel that the 4x4 is the most valuable relay, and it's the most important thing because it's at the end of the meet. It's the hardest thing to do, and it encompasses the most type of athletes can run a 400. Your distance kids all the way down to your 100-meter sprinters can kind of meet in the middle at that event. So we cheer on the kids and we do all that. So it's these little things. You don't want kids to never not want to run a 400, or they only want to run the 1 and the 2. They don't want to do the things that they need to do to move up to maybe have an event that they're better. And you never make them run a 400 or a 4x4. And then all of a sudden you expect them to do it at the end of the year. That would be a problem. So what's one of the little things that we do early on in the year? We have JV competitions with unlimited entries. And every kid is, when there's a 400 available, every kid runs the 400. First time trial that we do, every kid on the team except for the throwers run 400s. Every kid. They run a 400 time trial. We have 4x4s and we have unlimited 4x4s. Every kid on my team runs a 4x4. And, realistically, and I know that kids are going to feign an injury or have stuff come up or have issues or whatever. So, okay, but that only becomes a handful of kids. The peer pressure then becomes a positive one where everybody does this kind of as a rite of passage, but also because it's a value that we have in our program, and we've modeled that throughout our program for a really, really long time. If I think that certain workouts are more important than others, but then the kid always seems to show up late or leave early or skip on the day of that workout, and I never hold them accountable to doing that workout, then I'm saying to them that they can get away with it and that I'm really not going to hold that standard to them or the rest of the team. So what do I do to model that little thing? That kid, if they don't show up on Monday, will do the workout on Tuesday. If they don't do the workout on Tuesday, they'll do the workout on Wednesday. If they're not there for 3 days, they're off my team. So you have to model those things for your athletes as you move forward. It's really important. Okay, speaking of important, you have to have things that are more important than others. So at the end of the day, Vern Gambetta talked about this a lot back in the day. He talked about there are things that are nice to do and there are things that we must do. So when we're designing training or we're building a program, there are certain things that are going to matter more than others. So for example, if the majority of your sport is running, guess what's probably going to be the thing you have to protect the most? Running. If the most important aspect of your event is throwing, then the most important thing you need to protect is that person's throwing arm. If the most important thing on your team is cohesion, physical cohesion, but you're doing a lot of stuff with one-on-ones and isolation drills, then you're never getting to the full activity that you need to get to in order to have that performance cohesion. So whatever is important to you needs to be the most important thing, and it should have priority over everything else. So for me, energy system development as a track and field athlete is the most important, which is your anaerobic creatine phosphate energy system, your glycogen system, and your oxygen system. So if those are the three that are the most important, then I better darn well be making sure that that's a priority in practice. So let's say a kid has an ankle injury and they can't run. Am I going to have them stand around at practice all day and just look at us? No. They're going to go do A, B, C, or D alternative workout that they could still get their heart rate up and model that behavior as close to the real thing as possible. So if we have a tempo day and we're going out and we're running at 85% effort with short recoveries for 200-meter dashes over and over and over again, then they're going to go get on the bike, and their bike workout is going to look incredibly similar to the training that they're doing on the track, so that they're not getting out of it. And that way we can close down that window to as small of a margin as possible from when they left us to when they can return to full sports performance or sports readiness. If I'm in a cross-country practice and I say, hey, long runs are really important, but then I spend an hour warming my athletes up and they don't get a long run in, that defeats the purpose. So when we get into cross-country season, as much as I value drills and the technical aspects of training, for those of you who know me, know that I am very thorough when it comes to warm-ups and how much time we spend on drills and stretching and all that kind of stuff. But when it comes to cross-country, the most important thing is running that long run. And if an athlete just got done doing an aerobic run, we're not going to go on a cool down because they don't need it. Because typically your aerobic run or your long run is going to be pretty similar or close to what a cool down would be anyway. So then you can slide in something more important. So everything has value. So you're not going to sacrifice the most important thing for something silly. So for example, if you've got the state championship coming up and that's the most important thing, and the kid's getting rest and the state championship happens to be falling on the same week that you have finals, guess what? I'm not going to do some 5-hour long banquet where we talk about each individual kid for 30 minutes and have everybody stay after school till 11 p.m. at night where they can't study for their finals and they can't get enough rest so that they can not only perform well academically, but they also have to perform well athletically. And so what am I going to do? Well, we're going to do something, but it's not going to be as thorough and with the glitz and glam that we might do in a different week, because time is not our friend at that point. And that's okay. And if people want to get mad at you for that, well, that's their opinion. But you as the coach have to make those tough decisions and model and explain why those things are happening. If I want to perform well on a Saturday and I don't compete on Saturday ever, you're not going to do well on a Saturday competition, because the kids have no idea what it's like to get up and to have to catch a bus or to get in, to have breakfast and do all that stuff on their own and then perform at a high level. If you want a kid to be able to train, race, or compete 2 days in a row, but you never have 2 days of hard competition together, that's going to be a problem. So all these little things add up to big things. But whatever is the most important little thing needs to be the driver and the skeleton for all of these other decisions that you fill in as you move forward into your program. But everything should have a root. Everything should root back to something important. For me, I want to be the best girls program in my entire school district. I want to be competitive, and I want to provide my athletes an opportunity to be competitive and represent something more than themselves. So how do we do that? How do we carry that every day? Well, there's 1,000 gazillion different ways to do it. And I have my own thoughts and ideas and my own values, and I try to model those every day, and you should do as well as a coach. It's really important to do so. So those are just some of my thoughts, guys, about modeling and the different ways that we can do it through behavior, through our choices, through what we emphasize in practice, what we show matters to us, through the things that we choose to do. All of it is relevant, and all of it sends signals to the people you work with, compete against, and coach. Thanks, guys. Love you. If you're watching this video on YouTube, hit subscribe, smash the notification bell, all that good stuff that you normally do. If you have any comments or ideas or thoughts about where I should go next with some of my videos, or you have some general ideas about modeling or things that you've come across as a coach or a teacher yourself, or just a person in life, let me know. I'd love to hear it in the comments below. Until next time, guys, we'll see you. Peace out.